How's it going, everybody? This is Seer here, and I have a talking minnow on the screen right here today, and their name is Lips. They are one of the new members of the Marvel Strike Force Player Voice Council movement. What is it that you would prefer to have as your title in this?
Oh, you call me Lips. The reason behind this, and hi, Desir, thanks for having me on. And I apologize again for not having my video available, but I was able to find the avatar that I used the last time I was a council member when I got to choose my own nickname. So I went under Mr. Minnow. So that is who we're looking at right now. I'm so sorry wasn't able to get my lips moving on there. That would have been much more fun. But maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe next time. That would be pretty fun to have on there. Basically the point of this call video is to kind of get you out there, kind of give you a face for the community, even if it is a talking minnow, to kind of give people context. How long have you been playing Marvel Strike Force for, and how did you get involved in the Marvel Strike Force player voice?
For sure. And thanks again for having me on here. We really appreciate any opportunity to speak to the community. This being kind of my first opportunity to have that as a newly minted leader within the movement. So actually I had to check and see how long I've been playing today, and so I am exactly 2,175 days.
Nice.
Which roughly translates to a few months after a global launch, which I believe was in March of 2018. I found MSF through back channels, if you will, and it was a bit of a sordid affair. I was playing another game, and they had one of those things called an offer wall, right? Which thankfully MSF doesn't have. But basically, you complete an action to gain some in-game currency, kind of like a Core's equivalent. And so in order to do that, you would either, get a subscription to like Norton Antivirus, which you would then promptly forget about and get charged the full amount for, or download a game and complete some actions within a certain amount of time frame. And so one of those, so that was MSF for me.
Nice.
And I heard about this movement, got on the Discord, started reading it around, and then May of 2023, they put out the state of the game report, right? That big long 65-page tome of information. And this was a time, if people don't remember, where we had just released, APOC was just out, everybody was forced to build all these horseman teams. We had no player agency. We were still had the hoarding economy, right, where you had no idea if you could upgrade, what you could do, and it was really, really frustrating, right?
Yeah.
And so when they put that game report out, and I read through it, and I thought, this actually could be something. I thought it was really reasonable. It was well written. It covered every aspect of the game, and it really wasn't confrontational, right? In a way that was like, if you don't listen to us, then we're going to spend strike, or something. I felt like that was. We're not just pounding on a table kind of thing, which to me I thought was really important. And the best part for me was that they were able to kind of thread all this through the lens of different types of players, right? And different in the way that, people experience the game, for better or for worse, through the type of spending that they have and their level of engagement. And so, when they presented all of this to Scopely, they actually agreed to their biggest request, which is to form this players voice council. And then the leadership within the movement, people like Sevi, Evdog, and Beta Ray Bill, among others, put together this. I thought it was a very reasonable application process, right, where it was anonymous. People answered a series of questions, and I don't know if I did it on a lark, but I still cared about the game a lot, and I thought I had something to offer, so I put my name in the hat under the category of FTP adjacent, which in their mind that equates to, we set up these buckets. This was not, Scopely didn't set the limits or how many buckets you could have. So we had, free to play, and the one that I chose was, one that that was in was FTP adjacent, which equates to between $1 and $50 a month. And then you had, your medium spenders, your whales, and then your whales and kraken was kind of the last bucket. So it's really four main buckets to a certain extent, if I'm not mistaken. And so for whatever reason, people liked what I had to say, and I was voted in, and then we started getting to work in July of 2023 last year, and I can't believe it's been a little over a year, and
it really doesn't seem like it.
It's crazy. I know the time. This game has a really, really warped ability of your sense of time, I think, and it's hard to imagine what was only a year ago or 2 years ago. But I served my time. My watch ended, and then I was kind of retired from the council. They put me in the Del Boca Vista Phase 2 down in Florida. I was having a nice time, but then Beta Ray Bill had decided to hang it up, and then another gentleman who was part of it named Shusky, he decided to step back, and so we were, the group was kind of only had Sevi, and she is already doing so much, and so she reached out to some folks to ask if they wanted to get back involved. People like Johnny, who everybody knows, from if you've ever looked at a leaderboard, he has a representation of he's been around for a long time and playing at the highest level. And Evan B, who just had a great talk with mobile, kind of going about what I think we're going to talk about later. He was in it from the beginning. He's written a lot of our statements. The one that you see kind of on the screen right here, that was all him. I think he's got a great way of putting together all of our thoughts. And so, and then that she reached out to me, I think, because I think I'm level-headed. Pretty easy. I'm pretty good at organizing thoughts, and I'd like to think that I am able to, speak about, other people's experiences. I'll try not to make it all about me.
Yeah, I was just about to say that's a very important part as far as like the player voice. Nobody's really out for their own agenda. They're always trying to help out the community as a whole.
I mean, that's the idea. That's the whole point of the thing. And whether or not we're succeeding is, you could ask 20 different people and you might get 20 different answers, and that's fair. Everybody has their own idea of what they think that we're supposed to do. But we, as the council, what they had set all from the beginning is just trying to make the game better for the widest percentage of folks we can, and keep pushing Scopely to do that within the confines that we're kind of set up in.
Yeah, and there's the conception where it's like the Council of Krakens, right? And we really want to try to get away from that misconception that it is a Council of Krakens, because when it started up, it was, like you said, Beta Ray Bill, it was Evdog, Sevi. They're all very high-level spenders that the community knows of, so they're like, well, they shouldn't have Krakens be running this. So something I think is actually good for the community, with these players kind of stepping away, kind of retiring, handed the reins off, if you will, is that the new people that's in charge is going to be Evan, who basically spends like battle passes and character purchases, it sounds like, from the video that he did with mobile. That's about the bracket that I would sit in.
Right.
Johnny's a very high level spender. We always see him on the leaderboards and everything. And you started out as free-to-play adjacent. Are you still there, or are you a little bit higher than that, lower than that? What's your level at right now?
Yeah, no, I've kind of been, I've always been a low-level spender. I started off not spending at all, probably for the first year. The very first time I bought a character offer was when Moon Knight came out. He was my favorite tune when I was a kid. So I was just like, you know what, I'm going for it. And before that, I hadn't really spent much money at all. That kind of kicked off a little bit of spending because I, wanted his team to do well and, bring him up. And I don't think the cap at the time was maybe even level 80, so or 85. But anyway, so and then the passes came out, and my idea with spending is really when it comes to there's a big value component to it. It's like, what am I getting from this? Am I going to be able to do something with this money that I'm spending, like in the game, right? Is it going to take me from 4 to 5 stars or 5 to 6 stars, right? And I'm not going to spend up to get the 7 because that's such a big jump in terms of my level of spend, right? It takes, I'll just get from 6 to 7 kind of naturally, right? And so I think my spending has generally gone from 0 to maybe, I think the most I've ever spent in a month, and I frankly I don't track it, but $100 would be a lot.
For the people that don't really know or are fully aware of what the player voice does, can you give like a quick overview and maybe some of the accomplishments that kind of came with the player voice? Because in this over year time, which is still crazy to think this happened back in last July, so there's been a lot of change that happened in the game as far as good that came from the player voice. So can you give a little overview of what you guys do and some of the accomplishments that you had? Kind of brag a little bit, if you will, about, hey, this right here, we did that.
For sure. No, I'd love to. I think the overall goal for the player voice is to represent a broad spectrum of the players in order to have a proactive voice in the decisions regarding the game moving forward, right? I mean, that's kind of, if you said it in one sentence, it would be that, I think. But from more of a day-to-day experience, the council and the leadership, meet bi-weekly with a group of employees with Scopely from the player experience team, which is I think is broadly under their community umbrella, which may also include, people like our new CM Pathfinder, right?
Yeah.
And so I think they all kind of fall within that umbrella. We're on a Discord that is run by Scopely. We have a channel where we can bring up, the council can bring up anything at any time. Although we try to keep things, tight from a messaging standpoint. I think it's just that channel gives us an opportunity to, talk about, maybe potential bugs. People are usually around at reset, maybe something wrong with the store. It's like, hey, have you seen this? That kind of thing.
Right.
And also bringing up things from from our own Discord, the player voice Discord. If we're seeing, rumblings about a certain thing, this or that, and say, hey, remember we talked about this before. This is still an issue. Let's bring it up at the next meeting. We set up our agendas. It's just like work, really. You put up an agenda on a Monday for a meeting on Wednesday, and you kind of have old things we've been working on, and then some new things that we can talk about, right? And so, from an accomplishment standpoint, I think the number one thing, and one that I wasn't involved with, was, getting the council created in the first place. That was the most important goal from the original, the original report that they put out and presented to Scopely. I mean, that was the big ask, and it really opened the door, I think, for consistent communication and feedback, not only for short-term things like like I said, like bug identification. That's the things we really don't want to be focused on. The whole point was really to be more future focused, but it just so happens that we kind of get through that. But and through that, we end up talking a lot about when mistakes are made. We talk about compensation, and timely communications. I think that's one thing they've gotten better with, is that communication part. Like, hey, we screwed up something. Comms are going to be coming out. Comp's going to be coming out. It used to be, we didn't really know what was going on and whether anybody would be comped ever.
Yeah, right.
So having that avenue, I think they've gotten a lot better with that. And one of the first things one of the big, I think when we got the agreement to stop hoarding, right? The hoarding was something that the community was just absolutely over it, right? Because you didn't know whether you could do anything with your characters, right? And Beta Ray Bill, one of the things he used to say all the time was, this is a game of progression, right? And if you are not progressing, then what are you even doing here? It's just, and if you don't know if we need to save gold or save core. Actually, we do still have core spending events, but saving gold or spending gold or spending mats. Everybody just waits for those events to pop up, and then you start cranking up your characters. That just doesn't. It never felt right, and thankfully they stopped doing that. And I don't think we've had one since.
I think there was the one that happened, and they said, "Well, this is like a very rare circumstance," if I recall.
Right.
But yeah, for the most part,
everything as they subject to change. It's subject.
Right.
To change.
Right.
But yeah, as far as gold itself, we eventually were able to get more gold, injected into the economy after, we presented a very heavily researched spreadsheet in essence that showed them exactly how we get gold every day, every week, every month, the expectation, the expected return, and everything. And this is before level 100. So the injection is now a little lessened, but it's still there. It still was there, right? And we're not hearing as much about Gold Crunch, even though it's still, it just really depends on where you are. T4s were increased now with the Spotlight raid, and so that was good. As far as future content, I think one of the NDA kind of prohibits a lot of that discussion, but I think in general a big win I think that we had was our discussion and release, helping them really craft a good release for diamonds, and that kind of coincided with a more of a flattening of the Red Star economy, right? And so I think originally the diamonds would have really, the way that they had originally presented, I think may have been something that the community would have been really, really rough overall, and I think there would have been a really big backlash. So I appreciate that they listened to what our thoughts were, and we had a lot of internal discussion about what would be the best thing for everybody going, again, for the broader spectrum. So I appreciate that they were willing to listen, and I think overall the diamond system doesn't seem terrible to a certain, but again, everybody's opinions vary. What do you think about it?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest thing is before the player voice, when I started playing, there was the Fix MSF movement, there was the Save MSF movement. I think there was another one before the player voice actually stepped up. So I don't think people kind of realize, like some of these newer people that's coming into the game realize how many times we've tried to get these types of changes done in the game, and the fact that we were able to get a player voted council together that works side by side with Scopely, and they have those meetings that you mentioned. That's just huge. So that's why I'm always for the player voice. I don't see them as a Council of Krakens myself. I know there's a lot of misconceptions, like we said, but as far as the biggest accomplishment, the player agency, like when Apocalypse came out, everybody was having the same roster. You had to spend your resources the exact same way. And as much as I liked the experimenting of trying to get a powerful character like Apocalypse, I think they just kind of missed the mark a little bit on that. And I'm glad that they're going back and kind of fixing that as far as characters that can be used. Now we have the influx of the blue ISOs. So now these newer players that come into the game, they kind of have a better path towards Apocalypse. I think that's very huge as well.
But yeah, I think we've tried to, not only work on things that are happening currently in the game, things that are kind of coming out in the game, but also we really push for things that are kind of game adjacent, the quality of life thing. The biggest one I think being the open all orbs, right? And it came out, and of course it got borked, and then we had to shut it back down, or they did, and then now it's back and it's better than ever, and everybody's really happy about it, right? And that's something that should be celebrated. And people will say, well, why couldn't you just do that all along? What's the problem? And I think one of the big issues as we're seeing this rollout of the new graphics, you can see the potential of what this new engine can be, I think. But also, it almost seems like they're trying to, tweak it in real time.
I've noticed that too. Yeah.
Like I've noticed some parts getting better, but obviously there's a lot of parts that are still looking like, somebody's messing with your monitor, just cranking up the contrast and everything.
Yeah.
And of course you get these stories of people's, phones just completely, burning up while under use, and that's frustrating. And all the while we're in this, kind of new release method that everybody's seems to be upset about.
The new blog, the future of character release events. So with this, they're basically changing the way that characters come out. Basically, there's going to be two phases. A phase 1, which is basically the initial release of the character, and then phase 2, which is like part 2 of the release of the character. And they're making it to where at least one character within 30 days after the character's initial launch will be made even more accessible through engagement. The way that I initially read this was one character would have the typical release method that we're used to, where it's like, hey, do this event, you're able to get these characters. What it looks like is Sentinel for the Orcus team is that one character because he had the guaranteed 1 shard, so he has a lot more accessibility, whereas like Nimrod that we've discovered, they're kind of going back to the Gore and Thanos orb as the main release for that. So
right.
I know for like the envoys, when we were in the call, like the air just got left out of the room. Like a lot of people were not happy about it. I was asking a million questions. I was probably knowing the other envoys, like, okay, what about this? You guys mentioned this. What about the cadence? Like, is that changing as far as like the farmability? I was just asking every single question that came to mind. I wanted to know all the details that they'd be able to give out. What was it like for you guys when you kind of got the news about this?
Well, I think if we were all on camera, I think we'd just be sitting there blinking.
Yeah.
Because we really only had about 30 minutes before the embargo dropped on the release of, people talking about it on video. Mobile's video, and Dorky, I think, had one, and other folks. And it was really, we had to take some time to kind of, process it and look at it. And, a lot of it in there it's not necessarily, we didn't know it was going to be the strategy going forward, right? So the way that it was, our understanding, the way it was presented to us previously is that, we, like they're saying we, and again, let's take it back a minute to one of our other kind of, wins to a certain extent was that we had a general agreement with them that, players would be able to get new tunes free to play within up to 7 stars, right? Within a set time frame, right? And that was kind of like the baseline in which they were working with. And so within that confine, they said that they wanted to try and experiment with releases, right? And so the first one being, the Captain Britain and Illuminati. So the Captain Britain ended up being this type of character where it was kind of a harken back to the old classic, legendary, 5-star gating, right? If you don't have X characters at 5 stars, like, Fury used to be, 5, what was it, Kree minions, right?
Yeah, and, which made perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. But not only did you have that, but the release method for Hank and Shuri was built on these orbs that were kind of the predecessor to what we're working with the Annihilators and now with the Orcus team, right? And so it made it, and I think it seemed like, hey, we want to try and get what they say more folks to get engaged with these orbs in many different ways. So they've kind of created this, what I call scratch off orbs, that, that are basically, they're cheap, but they're also kind of, I don't know if they're predatory, but people who usually buy scratch offs are people who are not necessarily should be spending this money on scratch offs, right? And so that's not good value, right? And it's something that I don't think is not been well received, even though by nature the number of the thousands of players that we have get these, up to dozens of wars a day through the various means. By the nature of the orbs, existence, the way they set them up, you will have more unlocks, right? But what are those people that are unlocking doing with those characters? Are they as hyper engaged as we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to find out the cases that I'm thinking the answer is probably no, because there's a lot of people. I think there's more casual players than there are hyper engaged players, you know.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
I don't know if the people who are getting these unlocks are doing anything with it, and they're not. I don't think that they're getting engaged as much as I think Scopely maybe wants them to, even though the metrics would show that more people are unlocking, right? To a certain extent. I don't even know if it's statistically significant, you know?
Well, that's the thing. Like, the metrics they're looking at is kind of the wrong metrics. So, like Captain Britain, you had to get Hank Pym and Black Panther Shuri up to the 5. So people would push harder on that just to get the Captain Britain unlocked. Then the Illuminati itself is a legendary unlocked team. The Annihilators, a legendary unlocked team and an arena team that historically everybody goes hard for. So
Right.
that in itself is going to boost up the metrics. And people had a lot of power cores because he just boosted the power cores in the arena. So they felt, I can burn them on this, and then this news dropped. So people's eventually going to run out of those power cores. We have the Orcus team. You don't even need Omega Sentinel. So people's probably going to pass on purchasing her and save that for the next team, because like Blade got announced for that Night Stalkers team. People's going to be saving those cores for Blade, and Blade's numbers are going to shoot through the roof.
I'm just hoping, you know, now that we've had a month of Annihilators being released, they can look at the data a little more clearly, and hopefully we can get to something that is, I think, a bit more player friendly from a perspective where you have a bit more understanding of the expectation, right? And not having such a wide range of RNG focused orbs that where you could unlock within 0 to 45 days. That seems like it just seems like such a long period of time of not being able to plan for your resources and how you're going to manage it. And then it's, you know, especially for, again, a team like Annihilators, if you are unlucky and you just keep on plummeting, you know, through the ranks in arena and you are free to play, this is the one place where you count on getting, getting your cores from, because cores is a big part of the unlock methods for FTP. So it kind of, I don't know, it seems like you're getting it from both sides, you know?
Yeah, so something I want to know is they're going to be doing these Path to blogs. Like, we had the Path to Orcus. I'm really curious if, for the Path to Night Stalkers, if they're going to give us more information. Like, if they say such and such character is going to be the higher release character that you're able to get, and these two aren't.
Yeah.
That way people can really plan. The orbs that they're doing, the Sentinel orb wasn't bad, how they guaranteed the 1 shard. The Nimrod, I'm barely getting any progress with him, so I'm really feeling it, where if I didn't purchase him, I wouldn't have him. And we're probably about halfway through. I think we're about 5 days in on him, I want to say, because I think in about 5 days should be the next Omega Sentinel, if the timing's correct. So like Nimrod, right. I'm barely getting any Nimrod. It looks like phase 2 is going to have Gore currently as the month-long. I'm curious what they're going to be doing with Thanos Endgame, so we have a better idea of what the plans are for the phase 2, because phase 1 is basically just the team orbs from what we can see based on the Orcus and the Annihilator orbs. So phase 2 is really what I want to see. Like, how are people going to be getting the power-up moments, as they call it on here?
Yeah, that is our main topic of discussion. It was last week, and it will be again this week, on how we can start to at least talk about strategy in some way, that what people can expect, you know. Not, and again, I we always can appreciate experimenting with this is their game, and they want to try and get people more engaged in spinners. They want to make They want to increase FTP, have them to start buying little $5 offers here and there. And they want the minnows to start to become into dolphins, turn into dolphins, dolphins turn into whales, whales become krakens, et cetera, right? I mean, that's kind of the business model. And unfortunately, like, we're kind of in the middle of getting experimented on, and we don't really know which way is up sometimes, I think. And it would be really helpful if we can just get a better understanding of where we think players are going, where we can plan better for. But that's always been, how can we plan better to use our resources, and not using fear and FOMO as an engagement method. I don't think that's sustainable long term.
Yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment there. In regards to this whole method and everything, so there's currently the 3 new leaders, you, Johnny, and Evan. Where do you see the player voice going with you 3 basically taking the reins from Sevi, Beta Ray, and Evdog?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, these are big shoes to fill, right?
I mean, it is.
they did so much, and it's really hard to I can't overstate how much effort that I know that Evdog put in, even though he left not soon after the kind of council was created, so I didn't really get a chance to spend a lot of time with him. But Beta Ray Bill is heavily involved. He's an incredibly organized person, speaks well, has been involved in the tech industry. He knows folks, and obviously Sevi the amount of hours that she put in, not only with the council, but leading one of the biggest clusters with NWO. And WPF before that, and then just running the whole Discord. MSF, our Player Voice Discord has I think almost 10,000 people, if not more, maybe 12,000.
Yeah,
there's a lot of folks in there.
It's a lot.
It's and running all of the getting the polls out, and doing all that. So all that being said, they started it, right, and they set this all up. And I'm not saying the ship drives itself, but it absolutely does not. But thankfully we're not starting from scratch here, and they've really set us up to give us a lot of information to make sure that we can continue to push forward. Nothing has really changed as far as the movement is concerned. The idea that behind it is still the same. This was always a long-term mission. With, I think, an expectation of slow and steady progress, right? Where nothing is going to be solved overnight, and no single change is really ever going to be good enough for people. Or not even so much for people, but good enough for us either. Nothing is, we want to continue to kind of just keep our foot on the gas, right? But also, we're not going to bang our head against the walls if it seems like if that's what we're going to do, because at the end of the day, they make the decisions for them, they being Spooply, of what's best for them. And if we can try and help them, modify or change things to make it what we think is best long term, and not feel like we're short-sighting anything, then that's what we're here for, right? And we're going to continue to do that as long as we can.
I know you guys always do the voting as far as getting representatives for those player buckets, the pricing buckets. Are all those votings done, or are you guys still voting to get the next set of council members in, since there's like that rotating door for people?
Yeah, no, I think we plan on doing it every 6 months. And so the last one was if I'm not mistaken, was in July. And so that was when we brought on board a few new people, and you're also allowed to reapply, right? If you're a current one, you can reapply if your time was up. And it's all anonymized. It's all nobody knows who you are. And if you've seen the application, you just fill it out, and there is a bit of filtering that we have to do before the votes come in. So before we put it out to vote, to make sure people are eligible. Yeah, the next one I think is going to be coming up, probably maybe towards the end of the year, when other people's it's probably become like summer and then winter kind of a thing, where we rotate in. So so yeah, then we'll have more opportunities for folks to have a voice. And I think that's the best part about it. That's part of the reason why I didn't reapply, because I felt like I had my time,
Hmm.
and I wanted to make sure that other people had an opportunity to say something, right? And I think we got some couple great people in my former bucket, and we have a great group overall. I think they're really they're pushing the envelope. They're really trying to get things done for the people, if you will. And I'm just happy to kind of try to help steer us in the right direction and the best way I can. I'm not, again, I'm not Johnny, I'm not Evan. I'm kind of like Joe Player here, who just happens to be be asked to be a part of this. And I feel it's a privilege to do it, even though if it does suck up quite a bit of my free time, such that it is.
Yeah, it definitely takes up a lot of time. I think more time than people kind of expected. Because I applied for the player voice about 2 times. That was before I got to the Envoy program. I ended up going into like a focus group area, so I was still able to kind of contribute in some way. As long as you're active on that Discord, which I'll put in the description below. There's a lot of good channels in there for suggestions. If you have a good suggestion, put it in there, and then they'll try to pass the information on as well.
Yeah. I mean, all the thing I would request is just to be respectful of people's time and space, and try to be nice to each other, because we're all, I think it's interesting how we've all kind of come together, it seems like, as a community over this new release method. So it's nice to see everybody from all walks of life, to a certain extent, all kind of come together and have one voice, if you will, about this. So I'm hoping that Scopely will listen, and we can get to a point to where there's a reasonable solution to where people can have more information, and they can continue to meet whatever metrics that they need to meet, either monetarily or engagement wise.
But that is all that we have for you guys today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, getting to know Lips. He's a great person, as far as somebody that's going to be a great representative for the player voice. I'm really excited about the change. It is a shame that we did lose Sevi, but hopefully that's going to end up being better for everybody. Anything that you want to add on to that, Lips?
No, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me. Hopefully this was a good discussion for folks, and please if you need to reach out to me about anything, you have any questions, come find me. Again, like I said, I'm just a regular player. You can come dunk on me in Diamond 1 on Crucible anytime you want. Whenever time we're matched up, say you beat down player voice guy, so won't hurt my feelings. But yeah, please do get involved, and get yourself out there in any way you feel is important. Whether, again, mobile status the other day, if you feel like you want to change ratings, if you want to post on Reddit, post on Facebook, spend time in player voice, get involved in a discussion forum. It all gets collated in their work clouds, and also with us, so we can present what your wants and needs and desires are, and hopefully we can get stuff done. And so again, I really appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully.
All right, well, if you guys did enjoy this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of the day.